We'll hear from industry experts who have extensive experience in single-use plastic legislation, what's likely coming next in sustainable packaging, and everything in between, and what customers are truly looking for when it comes to food packaging, and how to develop the best assortment for you and your customers. One of our experts today is Colin Isaacs, the Senior Sustainable Development Analyst for CIAL Group. Colin represents Canada's leading experts in design and implementation of advanced environmental and sustainable development strategies. He's a former member in the Legislative Assembly of Ontario, Director of the Recycling Council of Ontario, and Executive Director for the Pollution Probe Foundation. Colin is also an environmental journalist for the Financial Post and currently publishes the Gallant Environment Letter. Our other expert today is Paul Rutherford, Bunzl Canada's Director of Category Management. Paul is a 25-year veteran in food service and grocery distribution. His extensive knowledge of procurement, global sourcing, product development, and costing has helped position Bunzl GRP and R3 Redistribution as Canadian leaders in sustainable packaging. Paul works closely with manufacturers and customers to bring innovative, sustainable packaging and new brands to life, while keeping current with both evolving government legislation and customer feedback concerning their transition away from single-use plastics. And moderating today is Margot Hennesett, the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for Bunzl Canada. Margot has led initiatives to continuously inform customers about the ongoing single-use plastic legislation in Canada and what sustainable alternatives are available to them. Thank you all for joining us today, and now handing it over to you, Margot.
Thank you, Shireen, and welcome everyone. So today we have a packed agenda. We're going to be covering what plastic bans are or are not in place in Canada. I know there's a lot of questions about that right now. The implications of EPR, or extended producer responsibility, changes to recycled content requirements, and as well the newest sustainable packaging alternatives available and what's likely coming next. So let's start with what's happening in Canada. So as I think all of our audience members know, we have single-use plastics legislation in Canada that was put into place in June 2022 and came fully into effect in December 2023. And during that period, the transition to alternative, more sustainable product substrates continued on, and it has continued it has been ongoing since. However, we also had an announcement in December when the bans fully came into effect that the bans had actually been overturned and are now under appeal. So Colin, the question for you is, what does overturned really mean? Can you help us understand what's happening?
Yeah, there are actually two aspects to this. First of all, the plastics industry appealed the ban to court, and they were successful in winning their appeal. However, since then, the federal government has appealed the court decision, and the current situation is that the court has offered the government a pause in implementation of that decision. So the ban is now fully in effect and will be until such time as the Federal Court of Appeal decides otherwise, if it decides otherwise. So whether we like it or not, the ban's in effect.
Okay, thank you, Colin. That's really helpful to understand. I think a lot of people are wondering about that. So the other question that we get asked a tremendous number of times every week is, should we expect more, and what? Can you help us with that?
We should certainly expect more, but what and when are the challenging questions. First of all, there's nothing going to happen until the court has ruled on the government's appeal of the overturning. That is expected by the government to happen sometime this month, but I think it's likely to be into the fall before we actually get a court decision on the appeal. Assuming the court overturns the overturning, then the government will move ahead very rapidly with more products being banned and with more ways of banning them and more enforcement of the regulations that are already in place. If the court rules against the government has a number of tools that it's studied thoroughly that would allow it to achieve the same objectives in a different way. And every expectation is that the government would use those paths. So whether we like it or not, the bans are here to stay. More bans are coming, and when is probably sometime in the fall of this year.
Thanks, Colin. And I think as we've discussed previously, there are also some complicating factors to that in that the different municipalities are going to also have different requirements, right?
Yeah, the Canadian way of doing things is not to have one government making key decisions, but to allow a whole bunch of governments to make decisions. And that's exactly what's happening here. And there are lots of bans of various things at a municipal level in some of our major cities.
So appreciate that, Colin. That's really helpful. Extended producer responsibility is the next topic of conversation. EPR. We get a lot of questions about this as well. So can you explain to us exactly what is EPR?
EPR is extended producer responsibility, as you've said, which is basically a requirement that the producers of the waste, which are deemed to be the companies that are putting products that become waste on the Canadian market today, the retail market, are the ones that have to pay for the waste to be dealt with, which means recycled, composted, or managed in some other system. So the question arises, what is a producer? And that varies a little bit from province to province, but it's fairly complicated. In simple terms, it means that every piece of material that is put on the marketplace in Canada, whether it's plastic or paper or metal or glass or whatever, is going to have to be dealt with as a cost to the company that put it on the market.
So
that's the definition of producer.
So that's really helpful for clarity. That's the key question I think that we're asked a lot of, you know, a lot of customers will say to us, but we're not producers. Why are we subject to EPR? I think you've just clarified that for us nicely. Thank you.
An unexpected definition of the word producer.
Right.
The best I can say is if there's any doubt to a particular company, go talk to your lawyer, because at the end of the day, it's a legal question as to whether you are or are not a producer.
And the implications are really fourfold, right? So there's the tax itself. It's essentially a levy, a tax, right?
It's a levy. Don't call it a tax. The government will hate you. But,
well, it's all right. We'll call it a levy.
It's a tax similar to a carbon tax.
Right. And it's based on a few things though, right? So end of life material. So the actual material that the product is made of, as well as how much of it has been put into the waste stream.
Absolutely. As well as how it is structured when it's put into the waste stream, because the cost of collection and processing is a cost that the producer is going to have to bear.
And it will vary by
the idea. This is not just a Canadian system. This is being adopted in Europe and around the world. And basically the idea is to encourage those who are using various packaging materials and putting them on the market, or putting single-use plastics on the market or any other single-use product, encourage them to make it as reusable, returnable, recyclable, or compostable as possible in order to reduce their cost of processing.
So, and hence there are reporting requirements around this too, and that's going to require the reporting by weight, by substrate of the products that are being used, correct?
Correct, absolutely. And that's a big job.
It is a big job. It's a huge job. And in fact, our Bunzl customers are, I know, those that are aware are excited to know, and those that aren't will be excited to know that we have developed a material footprint tool to help them accomplish that. And what that does is we take the assortment of products that they currently use in their businesses, we put that into the material footprint tool, and it will create that reporting for them so that they can understand what the EPR implications are of that particular assortment. And then the other aspect of that is that it will also map to other product alternatives that maybe have an end-of-life material that has a lower cost implication from the perspective of EPR. So we're having greater and greater demand for use on that, aren't we, Paul?
Absolutely.
So moving away from EPR and into recycled content, and specifically post-consumer or PCR content requirements. So, Colin, what should we expect with respect to PCR?
We should expect that there are going to be legal requirements put in place that packaging materials specifically have to contain a designated percentage of post-consumer recycled material. The idea of this is to provide markets so that used plastics are not going into the landfill, but they actually have a value because they are to be collected, reprocessed, recycled into new packaging or whatever it is that they can be converted into.
So, and we're expecting final regulations on this
Again, it's
year,
depending.
the summer months, I thought we'd heard, or what's happening there?
Depending on what some of those earlier things we discussed, particularly the court cases that are going on, come up with. But the government's made it very clear that they're moving in that direction. And as soon as the courts have ruled that they've got the power to do so, and there's not much doubt about that, they will move probably with a escalating requirement, probably something like 50% recycled content by 2025 and a higher recycled content by 2030.
Okay, so you just answered my next question, which is great. But just on this previous one, so we're expecting to see new legislation this year, before the end of the year, and I think you said there'd be a transition period as
There will
well.
be a transition period, but I'm very much expecting that the new regulatory requirements are going to come out this year.
Okay. So next question was going to be, how do we prepare for the future? I think you were just talking about this. So 30% content required by, is it 2026?
We don't know what the numbers are. They keep changing. Until the government actually announces the regulation, it's impossible to know. Those are just speculative numbers on my part and on the part of others, but it'll be something like that. The odds are there'll be at least an 18 months, maybe a 36-month transition period before you have to comply.
But in your opinion, then, I presume then it would make sense to start preparing now, because those requirements are going to come into effect. So it would be a good idea to be looking at the current products in use and have an understanding of what that recycled content, currently is.
And I would suggest not just understanding it, but having made sure you have access to enough post-consumer recycled material to meet those kind of targets and to start putting it into your production lines as soon as you can.
And I think that's also something that Paul is going to be speaking to shortly when we start talking about new sustainable packaging alternatives and trends. And what a fantastic segue. So thanks for joining us again, Paul. Let's start out with talking about sustainable alternatives in some of the most common formats that we work with our customers.
Sure. Today, we've inactivated all of our foam products in the food service hinge container category, and we've introduced new products to the marketplace. You see them there. MFPP, it's mineral fill polypropylene. That product has up to 50% less plastic in the product. You have bagasse. Bagasse is manufactured using plant-based materials such as bamboo, wheatgrass, and others. The market is shifting toward that. Clear polypropylene. Polypropylene is good for heat, and the market has shifted a little bit of the business toward that. Then we have non-PFAS bagasse, which PFAS is becoming a topic of conversation in the marketplace. and then food boxes. So we've eliminated the foam from our business, and we've moved to new substrates that we offer to our customers today. Yeah, other categories include plastic cutlery. We have shifted away from single-use plastic cutlery and moved toward wooden cutlery, wooden stir sticks. The old products are now obsolete in our database, and we've shifted toward wooden products in this category. And then the next category is black plastic. Is something that was legislated out from the federal government as well. We've shifted all of our supply of all of our plastic products from black to white or to other colors. That includes, polypropylene, anything that's PET, PLA, anything in the plastic realm. Black is now out of our business.
And I understand we've had good feedback on white alternatives. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah, the marketplace has adopted white as the new black when it comes to these packaging materials, and it's positively seen in the marketplace by consumers.
Fabulous. Next, Shireen, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about what's new and next.
Wow.
This is the exciting part.
Right. There's a lot of new. There's a lot of next coming. And as Colin stated, we're unsure of when these next round of legislations will come into place, but we're working toward that now. We want to be in front of your concerns as a consumer, as a customer of Bunzl and R3. So we're working on, because foam in the food service space has been banned, we believe that foam in the supermarket space will be banned in the near future. We're shifting all of our resources and energies toward finding alternatives to foam. We are developing new products as we speak, both domestically and abroad. We are going to exceed our 30% recycled content requirements, and we can turn up the dial on that percentage as the market shifts. And we are early adopters of this category, and we are talking to producers. We are securing your supply for the future now.
And this is a really challenging fit for purpose solution, isn't it, Paul? In particular, this application for fresh meats.
Yeah, in the supermarket space, you have both supermarket back of house. You also have production facilities in the processor realm. They all require different types of trays due to longevity of life in the store. So it's very important that we cover all our bases, and we are doing that.
Fabulous. All right, and we've got some other exciting things coming out, haven't we?
We do. So we're adopting a compostable hot drink cup that is already in our business. We have it, but we're shifting our business focus on lids from plastic to renewable products such as bagasse. They're compostable. They are the new plastic for lids. We're testing, we've sourced, and we're ready to go in the fall of 2024.
That's exciting. And as I understand it, this is another very challenging, particularly challenging product because of the application. I mean, obviously, we don't want hot drinks spilling all over people. We don't want lids dissolving as people are starting to drink their. Certainly, I don't want that happening with my morning coffee. I'm sure no one else does. So these things are. I think our customers may be surprised to know just how challenging finding the right fit for purpose solution can be to some of these very specific applications.
Yeah, Margot, they're very technical. We're testing all kinds of iterations of these products. We're getting into, version 12, version 14 of some of these products to make sure that they work. You're exactly right. You don't want to be spilling your hot coffee. So
Or your moisture from your meat products, either all over
Absolutely.
your grocery cart. So
Yeah.
it's important that we're focusing on the actual use of the product and making sure that it's going to perform well. I think we're going to see some questions about fit for purpose and comparisons between more sustainable alternatives and traditional products when we come to our Q&A.
Sure.
So we're working with a wide range of manufacturers that really focus on the area of sustainable product development, right, Paul?
We're partnering with world-class manufacturers that understand what the end user game is. They understand the applications, and these manufacturers have put a lot of energy, time, and money into producing this next generation of food service packaging and supermarket packaging. So we've worked Ecosystems, Pactive Evergreen. We have other vendors such as Eco Packaging, Gempack, and Dart. All of these manufacturers are leading sustainable packaging vendors and partners, and we're going to continue to evolve our business around their success.
Fantastic. And I think with that we are just about ready to turn this over to turn our 20-minute masterclass, which I think we've done a pretty good job of staying almost right within that, to you as our audience, so that you can ask your questions directly to our industry experts, and I know they'll be more than happy to answer them. I think we've already got a few that have started to come in. Shireen, maybe you can start us off?
No problem at all. Yeah, let's get our Q&A started. So the first question we have here is, do you have any idea how EPR will be enforced? It appears as though some importers may be avoiding responsibility in regards to levy.
Well, Colin, that one's clearly for you.
In terms of importation, yeah, I think there are some evasions at the moment even, but sooner or later, the major companies that are paying the largest part of the bill for EPR are going to say they can't support the idea of evasion of the levies either. And you'll have municipal and provincial and federal forces from the environment ministries in particular going out to lay charges against those companies that they find have plastic or packaging products that have not paid the appropriate fee.
Wonderful.
There have already been a few of those charges laid, and I'm sure we're going to see more. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Colin.
Another question we have here is, are there any exemptions for the bans for certain industries or products?
Back to you, Colin.
There are a few exemptions, particularly for medical products and healthcare products and applications from those industries. But basically, the import bans are being regulated by CBSA, and they won't let them into the country without the appropriate forms. So importation isn't that much of a concern. It's more small-scale operations where a company is just bringing their own in the back of the truck. Those are where the biggest problems arise. I think you'll see. I mean, we already have EPR in place or almost in place in 6 provinces. I think people are beginning to get used to the idea, and I don't think violations are going to be a major problem once we get it countrywide.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Colin. And this is a perfect segue off your last answer. Someone here is asking, any ideas on when the ban will be, when the bans will be put in place for medical single-use plastics?
Interesting. What do you think, Colin?
They will be put in place federally, at least, when the government has satisfied itself that there are satisfactory alternatives available. I'm not a medical packaging expert, so I'm not sure when that's going to be. But if the government comes to the conclusion that there are satisfactory alternatives, then you can expect that they will move with a ban of the product that they don't appreciate.
Wonderful. We have another question here. I believe this one's for you, Paul. You're making a great point on how retailers should start addressing recycled content percentage. Now, how is Bunzl working with its clients on providing concrete data on recycled content?
Well, I think that's maybe I can jump in here as well, Paul, and to start with our material footprint tool, because that would be the place to start when we're doing an analysis on current product assortment, but also when you're sourcing new product, this is a big part of your criteria, right?
Yeah, we on go forward basis on any product that we're sourcing, we're certainly looking at the sustainable attributes of said product. We're also considering the future laws when it comes to something that is of national brand, i.e. Pactive. We're collaborating with those manufacturers to make sure that the product is sufficient for what's required. And we're also thinking with manufacturers now about what is coming next. Where is the sustainable challenges going in the future, and we're working to satisfy supply chain now for future challenges.
So you're setting specific criteria
Yes.
for those manufacturers. So when your category managers go to them, they go with those criteria.
Yes, they have to. That's front and center now. It used to be, a specification and a price. Now it's sustainability attributes, price, specifications. It's much more in depth than what it used to be.
Wonderful. Feeding off of that question, someone else is asking, how much recycled product is repurposed or made into new product in Canada? How much recycled material needs to be shipped out of Canada to be repurposed?
Well,
At the moment, it's estimated to be about 9% of plastics in the marketplace will end up being recycled somewhere at the end of their life. However, the government is moving fairly quickly to try and ratchet up that percentage to a much higher number. And we can expect to see not just recycled content requirements, but actual monitoring and reporting requirements that every plastic product manufacturer or producer has to abide by. That's going to be another place where a lot of reporting is necessary, and where I think the Bunzl tool will be helpful.
That's a really interesting point, a set of points there, Colin. Maybe I can just ask you as well, does part of that have to do with, sort of public understanding of recycling practices? And do you think the government will be doing more around sort of public education around recycling?
I hope they're doing more about recycling, but I think that they're expecting that the industry is going to do that. So I think you'll see more burden put on industry. You probably are aware, and our audience may be aware, that the government is setting up an inventory of plastic products in Canada. Every plastic product that's sold is supposed to be reported to the government for a 3-year period, so that they can actually get their hands on good data, which doesn't exist today.
Around recycling?
Around recycling.
Interesting, okay.
After some of the other, I guess I shouldn't call them fiascos, but problems with things like the Arrive Can application, I'm wondering whether they're going to be able to set up a database of every plastic product that's sold in this country, but they're certainly trying. And they've notified the industry already that in September of 2025, they will be asking companies to report on all of the plastics they put into the marketplace in 2024. So companies need to start collecting that data right now.
So that's a critical piece of information, Colin, that, right? We should all be, I think that our material footprint tool is going to be running 24/7 the next little while, based on that.
All right.
Other questions for us? Shireen?
Absolutely. We have another question here. I want to adopt more sustainable packaging, but I'm worried about how the food is packaged. Is sustainable packaging reliable?
Paul.
Sustainable packaging is evolving every single day. The manufacturers are getting better at producing products that work. I was just at a vendor's innovation center last week, and the amount of technical expertise in the marketplace is incredible. It's available, and we can help customers tailor make a solution for them that works. We can test it with them. We can partner with them with manufacturers. We can absolutely find solutions that work for the customers.
Perfect. And another question we have here is, can MFPP be recycled? If not, how is it not banned?
So maybe for any of our audience who are not aware, MFPP is mineral filled polypropylene.
It is. So mineral filled polypropylene, it's a plastic reduction play. It has about between 50 and 60% of the original plastic, and the rest of it is filled with powder, talc, something of that nature. It's not recyclable with the MRFs today because it has more than one material substrate in it. Unfortunately, it, for all intents and purposes, today is garbage. I suspect, and Colin, I defer to you, but I suspect it's a loophole that the government may not have seen that they will see in the future and address it.
I'm sure you're right that they will see it as a loophole and address it. But one of the things that confuses these kinds of discussions is the use of the word recyclable. MFPP is technically recyclable. It can be recycled. Whether it will be recycled depends on the economics more than it depends on the properties of the material.
Yeah.
And I think you'll find that once EPR starts kicking in a major way, everything that can be recycled will be recycled because it'll be cheaper to do that than to send it to landfill.
All right, thank you very much. Another question we have here is, and I believe we touched on this a little bit earlier, how are compliance and enforcement being monitored? And are there any penalties for non-compliance?
There are penalties. They come under the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, and that means that if you don't meet federal regulations with regarding to the SUP bans or recycled content or whatever, that you're going to be in big trouble because the courts have been awarding very major penalties against polluters. And this comes under exactly it appears to be a rather trivial piece of environmental law, but in fact the courts will interpret it as a very important part of environmental law, and penalties could start running into the tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines for companies that aren't meeting the requirements.
Thank you very much, Colin. Another question we have here is, if everyone is buying sustainable packaging, how can I ensure that I have access to a steady supply of it for my business?
Over to you, Paul.
Wow, that's a great question. We at Bunzl Canada are working incredibly hard to source products that our customers need. We are working now thinking about what the future holds. We're always thinking about what is going to happen in the future. So we spend a lot of time sourcing new substrates, sourcing materials, sourcing new vendors that can supply our requirements well into the future.
And Paul, that's from a sourcing network that's global, right?
Right.
I mean, we're bringing in product from many regions around the world.
We have sourcing networks right around the world, Canada, North America, and around the world. We're always in tune with what's going on around the world. Just yesterday, understanding the marketplace, talking to our sourcing folks around the world that we have inside of Bunzl, and understanding what the market is doing, understanding what the supply is doing, what substrates are changing, what is increasing in price, decreasing in price. We're paying attention to market conditions, and that's shaping our decisions going forward.
Thanks, Paul. I think just going back to the specific question around essentially supply and demand is, I think, what our audience member was asking about. And I know that in talking to our customers every day, we send the same message, which is about preparing for the future, as in securing your supply by converting to or transitioning to, excuse me, more sustainable products now. The more the better, the sooner the better, and making sure that those contracts are in place so that that supply is secure. Right?
As 2026 approaches, manufacturers are going to be struggling to find enough raw material to satisfy the needs that the federal government is implementing. You can talk to a sales representative, you can talk to us about securing that need well in advance. We have vendor partners, we have manufacturers that are working with us and have agreed that they're able to supply those substrates, those materials with recycled content in them. But I wouldn't wait until the ban is in place before you start.
So you've got the partnerships so that the capacity requirement can be met, but it's a question of that has to be the action needs to be taken sooner than later.
Yes.
Okay, thanks so much. Anything else, Shireen?
Yeah, we've got a couple more questions here.
Okay.
Someone is asking, how does the life cycle of alternative packaging materials compare to single-use plastics?
Colin, enlighten us.
One has to undertake fairly costly, fairly extensive studies to determine the life cycle of a plastic material and of a product made of that material. So there's no generic answer. There's a complex research project for a lot of consultants and universities to engage in to be able to answer the question specifically. However, it doesn't matter. What we've been talking about in this webinar is government regulation, and the government is not taking life cycle into account in deciding what product to ban and what product to permit. I think they should be, but they're not. And therefore, one simply has to follow the guidance provided by the government, not worry too much about whether it's environmentally the right thing to do. People will probably be surprised to learn that pretty well all of the science-based studies that have been done find the single-use plastic shopping bag to have a smaller environmental footprint than any kind of reusable shopping bag. But doesn't matter, the government's banned the single-use shopping bag. So we all have to go to reusables.
Thank you very much, Colin. And one more question we have here is, what resources are available to help us transition away from single-use plastics?
Well, I think certainly our category management team is one resource, that's for sure. And as I mentioned earlier, Bunzl's material footprint tool can be used to assist you in mapping your current assortment of products that you currently use in your business to a variety of sustainable alternatives that meet that fit for purpose criteria. And you can also then do a comparison against more sustainable substrates from the point of view of cost. And then, of course, as Colin is saying, if you want to then look a little bit further in terms of actually understanding sort of the end of life element, I think, as he said, that's more of a study to undertake. But what we can do is talk about that level of recycled content, which is going to be absolutely critical. So can map to the alternatives that have the highest level of PCR as well. So I think that's those are really the key tools that we want, that you need to be looking at in order to move your assortment over to those sustainable substrates. Any other thoughts you have, Paul?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of thoughts around materials that are recyclable, and that should be a consideration in a material assortment that customers are looking for. Is it recyclable? Colin touched on that. Recycled content and recyclable materials are very important in the legislation. So we have a team. We're constantly sourcing products, Canada, North America, around the world. We have solutions for all of the single-use plastic ban materials that are currently in play, and we're working toward finding solutions for product categories that we believe are going to be in play in the future. So we're thinking about where this is going, and we have products in all the categories on the challenges that are already put in place.
So Shireen, I think the answer to that question is just ask us to help you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wonderful, and that brings us to the end of our Q&A for today. So I want to thank everyone for attending, and I also want to thank our experts for joining us today. Again, if you have any more questions for us, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to help. And also keep an eye out, and I saw some people asking for this question as well. Keep an eye out on our socials and in your email, because an on-demand version of this masterclass will be made available for viewing soon. And don't forget to follow our socials so you don't miss out on the next webinar. Thank you very much.